Hey guys, how's it going? Kripp here. Today we're going to talk about how to make a good build in Diablo 4. Now, this is a video that doesn't go into the crazy specification of perhaps the exact build that you want to be playing in Diablo 4, but now that we're kind of pre-launch and so much of the information is out there thanks to the data mining of the actual game, well, not the actual game, more so like the different beta, server slam, open beta type of cycles that we've been able to play, that's actually been like the entire game. They just locked it at like level 25 or level 20. So people have data mined the entire game, and we know a ton of information from the data mine combined with tests and experiences that people have had in those playthroughs. And from that, we actually have, in my opinion, a really good understanding of what it makes to have a good build in Diablo 4. So I'm here to get you guys started, and I want to give you guys a bit of background here. Again, while there's still a lot of uncertainty in what the best build will be, what the best skills, all that kind of stuff, the general idea of theorycrafting, practicing, making builds, it was huge when it came to like Diablo 3, for example. We did this so much day in, day out, and even though we were off in many cases, we were way off in other cases, because we had so much hands-on experience with a lot of the mechanics of the game, we had a good concept of how things work together. When the game actually came out, our Diablo 3 no-life team, we were easily at the top of the game because, well, it was just so easy for us to fill in the gaps for the things that we didn't understand because we had done so much of the work already. So even though, yes, the game's going to come out, people are going to figure out this crazy build or whatever, but let me tell you a few things. It's really important to get that practice in if you really want to be at the top of the game anyway. But also, I've simulated, at least for Sorcerer, like all the top builds that I would consider playing, and they're all within like 30% of the damage of each other, which is an impressive feat that they've been able to get that close. Sure, possibly something might have escaped the round of balancing, or possibly future rounds of balancing that Diablo 4 might have, but the actual tightening of the knobs, nerfing of the crazy interactions in the last server slam, well, possibly the game is going to be really finely tuned, as a matter of fact, from a balancing perspective. And that is pretty exciting. Now, let's get into it. So the first is the goals of a build. What do you want to accomplish? What makes a good build in Diablo 4? When you start a new character in Diablo 4, you're generally going to have like a basic skill, which is either going to be a filler when you have low or no resource, or it's going to do low damage but provide some kind of fairly unique effect. But these skills, while they're kind of like basic skills generators, they're usually not going to keep up with the actual core skills or the skills that are going to constitute the bulk of the damage for your build. And as your character gains in levels, you start to scale the portions of the damage of your build significantly so, even more so when we start talking about the Paragon boards and the Glyphs and whatnot, to a point where the basic generator, it's not doing like half the damage of your main skill. It's going to do like no damage compared to your main skill. So one of the main goals that you want in a Diablo 4 build is to get rid of your basic skill or starter skill, and it does actually apply to most characters, though not all characters. Some characters can't get rid of it, and some characters can actually scale it, and possibly some very specific builds will actually focus on basic skills, but I kind of doubt that, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And part of that is the damage buckets. So believe it or not, people actually know to great detail how damage multiplies in Diablo 4. And you might be thinking, there's no way that's happening, Kripp. Well, let me tell you what. I saw a video, I think it's from Goblin Inc. or something like that, where they did a test with Thorns damage, because a weapon has like a weapon range, so you have to have like a crazy amount of testing to actually get reasonable results when we're talking about small percentages, but Thorns damage doesn't have a range, and because they were able to amplify the Thorns damage the character does, they were able to get an outstanding understanding how the different mechanics in Diablo IV work together. And again, more on that in a moment. Now, another part of Diablo IV is I think every character needs to have a multitude of defensive options. Less damage taken from this, less damage taken from that, you need some of that. How do I know? Well, honestly, I don't know for sure. But the fact that you can get like 90% damage reduction on basically every character basically tells me that you're probably going to need to get about 90% damage reduction on every character. And the way damage reduction works in Diablo IV, it's just reduces the remaining damage. Nothing really stacks additively, so it's nice to have a really big effect. Like if you have something that's like damage reduced by 50%, that's really good. It's much better than if you have 5 instances of damage reduced by 10%, for example. That's much worse because you're going to 90, and then of the 90, 10% of that, well, that's 9. That's no longer 10, and it starts to lose its effect compared to the additive scale. But nothing adds together, so big damage reduction numbers are really good, but you're still going to need a multitude of defensive options. Another part that I think every character needs in Diablo IV is kind of like, oh crap, press the button. It's the big defensive cooldown. We've noticed that because so much of the game is in effect conditional, and again, more about that in a second, sometimes you're going to get screwed. Circumstance is not going to favor the character that you've built, and you just need something to keep your character alive. The big defensive cooldown, I think, is core to every build in Diablo IV. And of course, as with all ARPGs, you want to have a character that can excel reasonably so with dungeon clearing and bossing. But they have mentioned that there are going to be some form of at least one pinnacle boss at the very end of the game for powerful level 100 characters. Possibly you might want a specific bosser for exactly that purpose. So maybe an exception there. All right, great. Let's kick it off with damage buckets. We're going to have some spreadsheeting here, guys. Now, we do have a little bit of an extra detail here before you watch the rest of the video, and I do still encourage you guys to watch the rest of the video. I want to mention that the damage bucket system that I talk about in this video, and that you will see others talk about in probably lots of videos, even though it has been fairly well tested through pretty clever mechanics, I would say, it does actually utilize the in-game damage stats as part of its, let's say, theory crafting, okay? And it has been claimed by some that the in-game damage stats actually are wrong. Now, this has a few implications. On one hand, the damage buckets you might see in this video or in another video doesn't mean they're wrong, but it does mean that they might be wrong. Now, you're going to see something like this, and I'm going to talk about it in the video. Right now, the new theory is kind of sad. Damage is the same, int is the same, attack speed, crit, but then like everything else is in a single bucket, which it's kind of sad because you're building a character is going to be like get damage, get stat, and then get crit. That's it, right? So you're not going to have meaningful gear choices if it does work this way, but that's still another theory. And again, it's a little bit of a mess because apparently a number of people claim that the in-game damage stats are not actually correct. So it will probably be a case of we won't really know for sure until the game comes out, because a lot of what people base their theory crafting on is actually on the in-game tooltips. So keep that in mind and enjoy the video. Okay, so how does damage scale in Diablo IV? It's actually impressively elegant. Early on, because people kind of reference the game to like Diablo 3, and Diablo 3 does not work the same way as Diablo 4, we thought stuff like damage to elites was like really strong, because that in Diablo 3 is its own standalone multiplier. In Diablo 4, Not so. So this is how it works. First of all, we have all damage. So what is all damage? All damage is basically like your skill tree. Actually, your skill tree is really powerful. We'll get into that in a second. So don't think about that anywhere else. It's generally just the skill tree and the legendary aspects, of course. We have intelligence for sorcerers. I'm going to go for sorcerers, but you'll get a very good idea for the other classes as well. So this is your main stat. And I believe it's 100 of your main stat gives you like 10% damage. So if you have 1,000 intelligence, your damage is times 2. And nothing else will add to that. It'll just be multiplicative. Attack speed. Attack speed sometimes will multiply your character's damage, but depending on the character, not always. Same goes for crit. Crit is additive. If you have 50 crit chance and then you get 30 crit chance, well, you have 80 crit chance. Simple as that. And critical strike damage, but again, there's going to be a little bit of detail on that one. Now here's where it gets really interesting. So the next damage bucket is damage versus. So damage to something with a condition. So if the target is burning, if it's crowd controlled, if it's chilled, if it's close, if it's an elite, if it's healthy, if it's immobilized, if it's stunned, all of that adds together. So if you have like 100% damage versus burning and 100% damage versus elites, you're not going to do quadruple damage because it's not double your damage and double your damage again. The damage versus is a bucket. Those are going to add together. And in this case, if you have 100 to burning and 100 to elites and none of the others, that's 200% damage. So it's going to triple your damage to that target if those conditions are met. The next bucket for Sorc is really interesting. Damage while healthy. Now this is a condition of while something is conditional with your character. For Sorc and Rogue, that actually only has a singular source in the game, and that is supremely important. For some of the other characters, especially Druid, that can be a multitude of sources, but again, very important because this is its own multiplier. It's a hard multiplier. The next one is damage with. So if you're doing damage with burning and basic, let's say you have Firebolt. You have 100 burning damage and 100 basic skill damage. Well, Firebolt is going to do triple damage. And this is why I think basic attack skills are kind of a bit dead, because I thought that the gems and some of the basic attack skill damage that we saw as a stat on weapons would be its own multiplier to bring basic skills in line with more advanced skills. Well, it seems like that's not really the case, and there's actually very few basic skills in the game that will probably escape that no longer big difference. So this is damage with. Damage with, damage against, damage with a self condition, and vulnerable damage. Vulnerable damage is very important. The baseline vulnerable damage is 20. So if the target has vulnerable, you deal 20% more damage to it. Now, if you get something like 50 vulnerable damage, that adds to the 20. So if you have 50 vulnerable damage, which can show up on like the implicit of a crossbow for a rogue, by the way, you will do 1.7x, so 70% more damage to a target if it's vulnerable. Because sources of vulnerable are actually quite plentiful, not just on gear, but on paragons as well, I would be bold enough to say that if your character does not have relatively high uptime on the vulnerable status, your character is going to suck. Okay, now a few of these might be pretty hard pills to swallow, but you're going to have to trust me on this one. Now, on the other end of things, damage reduction works, again, the other way around. So if you have like 50% damage reduction from burning and 50% damage reduction from, I don't know, close enemies, it's going to be 50 and then 50 of the 50. No one's getting damage immunity in this game, okay? That's not going to happen. But one of the very important aspects of all builds and designing a build is realizing, look at this, you know? This is damage if you crit, damage if you crit again, damage with many different conditions. Damage if you're healthy, so over 80% health. Can you heal your character consistently over that threshold? Damage with different things. Damage you're vulnerable. Everything in Diablo 4 is conditional. And this is not something that goes away. These are not check marks that you really have to, yep, and then we're done. Conditional, who says, right? No, it's not quite that. For example, I have seen a lot of Sorc builds going chain lightning, and I don't mean to throw anyone on the bus, but I will give you my take on this. Okay, so they use the Firebolt enchant, which gives chain lightning burning damage, so they're getting a lot of damage reduction from burning. But here's the thing. If you really think about it, if you find a pack of like 10 mobs and you chain lightning it, it's not going to hit all 10 of them. So if like you're basing your defenses off the target being burning, you really have to think about if that is going to be something that is a high level of consistency. Can you rely on that for your character to function? So I would argue that chain lightning is not the best skill to rely on reduced damage from burning because, well, if you're taking 75% less damage from burning targets and you're chain lightning a pack and you don't hit something, well, it might kill you in one hit then. And then what? Well, our character is not going to be so good anymore. So these are very important things to realize. Everything is conditional, and you really have to use your brain here and analyze just how likely it is for those conditions to work out with your endgame build. Another part I want to go over is lucky hit. There's two kinds of lucky hit. And this is from like the Lothric build calculator. It's a cool thing. It's very basic. It's just what I used. So if we look at Arc Lash, it has lucky hit chance, 30% per hit. And if you crit, it actually hits a second time. So Arc Lash has like a 30%, or if you crit, a effective 60% base lucky hit. Okay. Now, I've said this a while ago, but some people still didn't believe me. If we look at Hydra, which has a lucky hit of 53, so you summon a Hydra, you can get an extra head if it's healthy. It lasts for 10 seconds. Those heads are constantly throwing fireballs at the target. The lucky hit chance for Hydra is per use. Skills that are per use is if every single hit portion of the damage over time hits the same target for the full duration, the then lucky hit is whatever it states. So compared to the two skills I just said, if you use Arc Lash and crit, you will have a higher lucky hit than if you have a Hydra out for 10 seconds that has hit the same target and never missed for the entirety of its duration. So obviously you can tell that Hydra's lucky hit is complete garbage. And then some other skills are pretty good. But, this is very important to know. Firewall, lucky hit is per use. Meteor, per use. That's 40 lucky hit chance. But when the meteor hits it, well, that's not the entire use. I bet you that it actually considers the burning ground as well. The other aspect is, it turns out, and this is a new development, and there are always going to be things that we learn as a community, but apparently Sorc skills, and possibly not just Sorc skills, have hidden attack speed multipliers. And again, some of the basic skills have it. Arc Lash has an attack speed multiplier of 1.25. This has been figured out from calculating the frames of all the different attacks from the Server Slam experiences. And if we look at the oh-so-beloved Chain Lightning, no attack speed multiplier. So actually, if you want to play a lightning-based build, I would say there are more reasons now to choose Charge Bolts, which has an attack speed multiplier. So this is more of a lesson that we're always kind of learning how different things work. I do suspect that a lot of content creators who have pushed Chain Lightning builds, at least in the very end game stages, might want to at least consider a few other options. In terms of the lucky hit chances on the skills, just for clarity in terms of a mechanic, if you get like lucky hit chance plus 5%, that's like 5% of the skill. So if I put 2 points in that, lucky hit chance increased by 10%. And if I use Chain Lightning, which has a lucky hit chance of 25 per hit, that would be 25 plus 2.5%. It would be a lucky hit chance of 27.5%. Now, this is easy to understand when we can all actually play the game, because that is actually updated live on your character's tooltip in the skill tree, which is pretty good. Another thing that I think really needs to be addressed is having reasonable expectations for the gear that you can expect for your character. Now, Aeronaut is someone who's done a lot of cool Sork theory crafting stuff. He's made a spreadsheet, and I have certainly benefited from this. All the different stats from all the best gear has been data mined as part of the server slam and whatnot. Again, they might change, there might be something, whatever, but there's some interesting things to learn. The maximum crit chance you can get with a two-hander is 26% on a sorcerer for the entirety of your gear. So much crit builds aren't looking so hot unless you can make significant use of the legendary aspect that gives you massive crit chance when cast above 100 mana. Now, another few things that you'll learn is there's going to be a lot of good stats on every piece of gear, but you can't get all of it. For example, if we look at like chest, overpower damage 61, sign me up. Damage 15, let's go. Fire damage 20, let's go. And then we start looking at the defensive. Whoa, what is that? 31% max life? Are you kidding me? I mean, that actually sounds kind of ridiculous. Damage reduction over 10%. Damage reduction from close. Damage reduction, from burning 20%. Barrier generation. Insane resistances that you can get on the chest, right? So, well, we don't know exactly, but the absolute best items that Blizzard has showcased, the like super rare ancestral uniques level 100, like they showed the Harlequin crest, yeah, that still only had 4 stats on it. 4 stats plus the unique or legendary power. There's like 12 stats that you want, but you're not going to have 12 stats on your chest. And this actually starts to break down a little bit because it's like, well, it's a Diablo game. Obviously, you go crit, right? Critical strike, critical damage. See you later, mob HP. Well, okay. So if you get crit and critical damage on every single piece of gear, you're going to start to notice that, well, you can't get like damage reduced from burning because it has no space for it anymore. You can't get like int, and int is a standalone multiplier, right? So actually, a lot of characters that people imagine haven't really been weighed in with the gear options. You need to have fairly reasonable expectations. The next part that I want to kind of go over is the skill tree. So the skill tree is one that actually most people have experience with. So you probably will know a lot of the basics that I'm talking about, but the interesting thing about the skill tree is the skill tree generally has multipliers, and that is pretty good. Like if we look here, your core skills deal 3% increased damage when cast about 50 mana. That's times 3%. So this, regardless of anything else, is a standalone multiplier. That's what that means. And obviously, if you look at like Glass Cannon, you deal X 6% increased damage. Typically, the legendary aspects are going to be like the same. I don't know if we have here. Okay, aspect of control. X 30 to 40% more damage to immobilize, stunned, or frozen. So X, always times, always standalone. That's the case for most legendary aspects, and that's the case for most of the skill tree. And in some cases, and I actually learned this one recently, could be wrong, but here's an interesting one. So you deal X 10% increased critical damage against burning enemies. Not critical damage, times critical damage. I believe that this is critical multiplier. So that's pretty cool. And there's a few things like that as well. I think Meteor has something like that as well. So it's pretty interesting. The board is deceptively powerful, and all your decisions are going to matter. And because of that, even though it looks like a really simple path to make a character, the slight differences can be so impactful because a few of these points can be a few total multipliers to your build, either offensively or defensively. Another aspect that's really interesting that again we found out in the weekend test, whatever we had. So in Diablo 4, if you get plus to like a grouping of skills, like if you get plus defensive skills on your amulet, it will actually unlock all of these skills as well. So that can save you a few points. That is something that's very important for some builds because, well, for a Sork, you actually definitely want plus defensive skills on your amulet, because every build's going to use like 3 or 4 of them. So yeah, pretty interesting there. Now, a lot of people, they know their skill set up and they're ready to log in and play some Diablo 4. And honestly, I'm not going to tell you guys how to play the game. But I do think it's important to tell you that the real build crafting begins with the Paragon system. The Paragon system is unbelievably complicated. All classes start with a Paragon board that looks like this. It's called the starter board. And while it looks like this and the position of these rare nodes and blue nodes is the same and the glyph socket is the same, what they actually do is going to be different. So after level 50, you get, I think you get a total of 220 Paragon points. So you basically use it as a skill tree. You go this way, we'll pick up the glyph socket, and then when we go up here, we link another board. So how about that? Let's go Burning Instinct. Bam. So then we have another board. Our skill tree is extended. But wait, these boards, they rotate. So Diablo 4 is a game where you basically design your own skill tree and navigate it. Now there's a few very important aspects to it that I think need to be considered. First off is knowing all the available glyphs. And again, this is data mined information. And this is very valuable data mined information. Glyphs are either going to scale with a stat within the range of the glyph, or will provide an effect if a certain threshold is met. So if we see here, Unleash grants 240 to magic nodes within range, requires 40 intelligence. Now to get 40 intelligence, sometimes will just be by default, but sometimes not. So you have to weigh in those options. If you're wondering how many glyphs you're going to use on your character, I have seen powerful builds that use as low as 4, but I think most builds will aim for 5 or 6 glyphs. And I will say that unless you really know what you're doing, if you have more than 6 glyphs, it's going to be a mistake. And I'll cover that here shortly. One thing that you'll notice is that the glyphs usually buff a type of skill. So if I want to go with the Adept glyph, my mastery skills gain an insane amount of damage, because it's for every 5 int, I get 14.4 damage. Well, Don the Crown has this spreadsheet, and he goes over the maximum stats within range of each board. So where can I get the most int? Well, Static Surge, but actually Static Surge is terrible, so I wouldn't recommend it there. But it turns out that the starter board always has 70 of your primary stat, and that's pretty good. All right. So we can actually pick up the Adept skill and get 70 intelligence, and with 70 intelligence, we can have like 200% damage with mastery skills and gain area. So the glyphs have massive bonuses. But if we go back to the damage buckets, your goals with the glyphs are usually to fill in the gaps for what your gear can't give you, or what the Paragon board nodes can't give you. Are you missing crit? Well, maybe you can get that on your glyphs. Are you missing a lot of stats? Well, you can certainly get that from a lot of glyphs. But more importantly, the two really big categories are damage against a condition and damage with a condition. And if you have like 400% here and 100% here, you're going to want glyphs that help with this category. For example, if we have like 400% damage with between elites, burning, and close, and we only have like 100% fire damage if we're using meteor, if we use the mastery glyph, which is damage with mastery skills effectively, that would be an enormous bonus, because we're going from doubling the damage to quadrupling the damage in that bucket category. So using those bucket categories and accounting for missing amounts with the glyphs is a very powerful way to approach a character build. So, okay, I will go with Adept. Actually, is it there? Okay, cancel that. So we'll go with Adept here. And to really make use of it, we're going to want all the int nodes. But now that we have all the int nodes, it kind of changes up how we want to navigate this, right? Like actually there's like no int nodes there, but this one gives 10 int, so we actually want to pick that up. So we do that. Do we want non-physical? Let's go with non-physical. Let's go with that path instead. So you're going to have these decisions, and these decisions are going to change based on the glyphs. You also level the glyphs up. I don't know how long that's going to take, but it's probably not going to be instantaneous. Diablo 3 has a similar system like this with the little gem things, so maybe it's something like that. Now, as you link up and you start to progress and you start to get other nodes, you're going to start seeing stuff like this. So you're going to have smoldering embers, damage reduction from enemies that are burning, and then a bonus, another 4% damage reduction from enemies that are burning if the requirement is met. These requirements are going to be based on how far away the board is from your starter board. All right, and it's, at least for Sorcerer, it's going to be 2 of your non-main stats. So the requirements, actually no, I think some requirements are int, but it's almost always dexterity or willpower. 2 stats you usually don't want that much of, and even if you did, aren't as easy to come by as you might expect. So this is fine. You know, I'll probably have a, I mean, it has like details here. It tells you how much, you know, stats you're getting from the Paragon system, because a lot of these small nodes actually give you quite a lot of stats. But the idea is that, you know, you put a glyph here, sure, whatever, and then you see the shortest path to the next one, you know, so we go here and then we attach, yeah, let's put that one there, let's rotate it there, or actually no, that was pretty good in its first setup. So we go there, and then we link like this one, sure, whatever, and then we get this, and then this is the shortest range to the next Paragon board. I'm getting somewhere with this, by the way. And then we get to this Paragon board. Yeah, well, this is going to be like 180 times 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So it's going to be 180 and 90 times 3. So that's going to be, what is that? 430 willpower. That's kind of a lot. And this is going to be 430 dexterity. Or 50, sorry. That's kind of a lot. And this is 1, 2, 3. I have seen builds that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no chance you're going to have like 900 of every stat on your character. I mean, you can, but then you're not going to have like any crit or any like fire damage or any of this, any of that, because again, 4 stats per item, probably. So that is pretty interesting. So how do we tackle that problem? A lot of the rare nodes are pretty good. Not all of them, but a lot of them are pretty good. But the way that you tackle that problem is by branching out. So if this is one board, you actually kind of want to link another board there. So instead of going 1 as your first board, 2, 3, 4, it is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then you can have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you have 4 boards total, like your starter plus 4, you want like a cross pattern, right? And then after that, I mean, you have to go for another one in the chain. But the other one in the chain, like, you don't have to get all those rare nodes. You know, in some boards, it might be better to avoid them. Some of the glyph requirements aren't that big of a deal. Some of them you can ignore because you just want the scalar, or some actually just don't have. Like, there was one earlier where I showed just 40 int in the range is all I needed to activate the glyph. Sometimes you just want to activate the glyph, and that is worthwhile. That is for you guys to figure out. I have pretty good mastery over this system for Sorc, but after Sorc, I don't really know that much. Okay, so that is for you to figure out. Now, each board also has one of these legendary nodes. Now, across the board, most legendary nodes are pretty useless for just picking up for all builds. They're usually very build specific, but sometimes you are playing that build. For example, this one heavily boosts your burning damage if you have crit damage on your character. And, well, if I'm playing a burning build, I'm actually going to want that. So we actually use that. Usually the legendary node is quite far away in terms of distance traveled from the glyph node, but the glyph node seems to be always worth it. So if there is a legendary power that you want on your character, you usually want it to be right after your starting board. And the reason you want to do that is because, well, like, look, if I get the legendary node there, suddenly I'm really close to this side of the board. So, you know, putting a board there, and a board there sets me up to have kind of the cross pattern, so I can actually reasonably have the stat requirements for the rare nodes that follow. Okay, that's really, really important. And overall, I think this system is going to take quite a lot of practice. I think there's a lot of few tricks that we'll figure out. For example, one trick that I'll give you guys for free. Best glyph in the game for Sorc. Where is it here? Imbiber. For every 5 willpower, you gain 8.8 increased damage while healthy. Now, this is its own bucket, as we have learned, while healthy. Turns out that's the only way to get while damage on Sorc. So Imbiber is actually going to be in every Sorc build that doesn't suck, which again then leads you to possibly it's a good idea to have a little bit of healing on your Sorc builds so you can get this condition if it drops off your character, if you go below 80% health. So that is also very interesting. But this process, it will take you quite a while. And again, I'm sure it'll change. I'm sure it'll change with the seasons. I'm sure someone's going to figure out something that works a little bit better. But knowing the basics and having kind of gone through it a little bit, or at least having thought about it, is really important to having mastery over builds in Diablo 4. That's my take. You want build examples? Well, they're coming up. Tune in the next few days. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.